I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you for that. Could I get a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda?
I make a motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you very much. Pearl, do we have any blue cards? No blue cards? And so we'll skip item C and D. There's no presentation. So if I could get a motion for item E in its entirety?
I'll motion. Oh, go ahead. Motion. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, could I get a motion for item F, the consent agenda in its entirety? I got a motion by Allison,
second.
and second by Christie. Any discussion? Okay.
The list of like equipment, it just didn't specify, is it disposal or selling it or recycling it?
Yeah, I'd be happy to address. So those are going to go to bid, go to auction. So we're working with Paul to place those out. So hopefully we recoup some costs on that. But before we can list them for auction, we'll need the board's approval to dispose of the items. Thank you. You're welcome.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Okay. On to item G, reports. Mateus, you're up.
Thank you. I just want to apologize if anything's a bit repetitive because I wasn't here last time. But I want to first start off by saying that the student government's trip to Lake Placid for the annual NYSCLSA conference was a huge success. I know that members, myself included, walked away grateful for the experience and with more knowledge than they had prior to what it takes to be a true leader. The guest speakers were amazing, and as were the experiences. Student government is now in early preparations for their next educational trip to Disney World in March. I next want to congratulate our school's DECA members who have advanced to the statewide competition in Rochester, New York this upcoming March. This year we had an impressive 18 individual event placers, including students Nathan Werchinski, Jonah Martinez, Maddox Ramsey, Chloe Sheehan, Michael Weaver, Andrew Landis, Andrew Card, Owen Chapman, Abigail Tetrault, Sarah Holbert, Connor Peterson, Avery Sheehan, Chloe Gibbs, Sam Follows, Gage Williams, Jack Mabel, Lillian Grinnell, and Gabriella Marizio, as well as 4 team event placers, including students Cadence Graham and Emma Lacey, Zachary Card and William Card, Ella Rupert and Sydney Saunders, and Matthew Jackson and Anthony Fon. Congratulations to senior Olivia Shire, who was named to the NYSPHSAA, also known as the New York State Public High School Athletic Association's All-State Team in Class AA for her impressive volleyball skills. Congratulations to senior Angelo Turo, who was selected to play in the Big 44 All-Star Game, where he was awarded the MVP award as well as the U.S. Army Warrior Award for his hard work, dedication, relentless effort, and commitment to his football team. And a congratulations to seniors Abigail Sundet, Grace Myers, and Olivia Lukey, who have officially been selected as the student directors of this year's musical production of Hadestown. Official show dates are February 6th, 7th, and 8th. According to Ms. Shantz, this year we had over 50 students audition, which has been the most ever. And then last but not least, congratulations to senior Maya Howard, who was nominated for Oswego County's Teen of the Week. If interested, you can find her article online where she talks about where her love for art originated and her gratitude towards Paul V. Moore's art department and staff. And that's all from me.
Okay, Mateo. It's awesome. Okay, board member reports. Do we have any thing we talk about before I make my motion? What's up? Okay, as we talked about last meeting, I am going to make a motion that the athletic, Janie's memo for the Central Square athletic placement process be incorporated through the policy committee for item 7420 sports and athletic program, so that they're incorporated and they're in line with what that policy is. Can I get a second?
Just a question on that. So we're not seeking to necessarily update the policy that we have in front of us. We're just seeking to do what with it exactly?
Well, the policy and the memo are not in alignment. Okay? So I'd like to get, whatever the decision is for it, have the policy reflect what the athletic directors put out.
Are we making a decision tonight?
I'd make a motion too, so that we can.
Yeah. So that we're not get it to that.
The motion is to move it to policy to discuss during the policy committee, correct? Is that the process?
It can be, yeah.
Yeah, but I thought we did all that.
Well, I think that if I can get a second, then we can discuss what we want and then put it to the vote. I mean, we can either amend it as I proposed, or we can put it towards policy to
I don't think I'd be
incorporate.
comfortable with moving it to policy until we actually took a vote on the consensus on where we stood with it. Before it went to policy, where that's when, you know, we typically see what we're seeking to change and discuss it from there. I think I'd like to at least gauge either through vote or further discussion like we did last time on
Okay.
the board's consensus.
Steve, I'll second so that we can now have the discussion.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so if we could, we'll go around and,
Because we're not really supposed to discuss till we get to the.
until we get,
I thought we discussed it last time, that's why, and
Yeah.
I sent an email
Yeah.
and didn't really get a response, so I'm trying to gauge what exactly we're doing.
well, I think that any time that we're going to be asking policy be changed on this, like we discussed it last time, but I said at last meeting that I would bring it, you can give it some time to think about it, we'd bring it up, get a motion made, and a decision one way or another as far as how we would like to go. And that's really what we should be doing.
This can't, to me, this policy, why does it keep rising its head every couple of years? Just put the information in there, say how it is, and, you know, get
To me,
beyond it.
the memo doesn't align with policy, so
Right.
that's my concern is follow the policy, we have to follow it, and we're not following it. So if we're going to follow the memo, it should be put into policy and then we.
Right, and I guess I'm a little bit confused based on Allison's comment in terms of, we don't typically tell the policy committee what to do. The policy committee usually does it, and then we do a first reading and a second reading to decide whether we, you know, so I don't know, I'm not really sure how, you know, I don't know that we need to come to consensus before we send it to them, because I feel like policy is the one that then develops the policy and makes the amendments. Granted, if we want the seventh grade provision of the memo to be incorporated in the policy, you know, I mean, that could be advised, because then if it comes back and it's not, theoretically, we're just gonna send it back to them after the first reading. But I don't know that the process is that we make the policy, give it to them to put into print, and then we approve it. That's not really,
I think it's a good idea that we do come to some type of clarity. Because when you look at the policy, as Steve just mentioned, 7420, and it does talk about the APP protocols set forth by the section, which we do comply with, because eighth graders still need to take the APP to be able to try out for junior varsity and varsity, which we still do. We still have seventh graders on certain sports that do not have a freshman or modified, such as rifle or golf, things like that. They still have to do the APP process. The only part that was a little bit kind of ambiguous is where it says in the policy, the superintendent will implement procedures for the APP and will direct the athletic director to maintain the records of the students who have successfully completed APP. So that's a little bit ambiguous. People could look at that and wonder, what does that really mean? Does that mean that the superintendent has the right to be able to say, like what took place in 2023, when it was brought to my attention that we were not going to have seventh graders trying out or younger? So for consistency and clarity, I do think that we should definitely talk about this, and then if the current Board of Education feels that that should be a policy, then this memo and this practice, I will say, because that's what we did for last year, will actually be written in. So anybody that looks at Board Policy 7420 would know there'd be no ambiguity. They would know exactly what it means. Is that what you were thinking?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So at least this way, then everybody now, 10 years from now, they could look at Board Policy 7420 and they would say, okay, for teams that do not have a modified or a freshman team, they would be able to take the APP and be able to play, because that's how we're currently doing it. But when they do have a modified or a freshman team, then seventh graders or younger would not be able to try out for those teams. However way we do it, it will just be written in there that way, so there'd be no confusion moving forward.
Okay. Any more discussion on it? And I'll just talk just a couple minutes about procedures and policy. So what I'm striving to do here is to make sure that whatever the administration has is based off of policy. And if policy is out of alignment, come to the board, right? Because that's our main responsibility is policy. And if it's not, and so that if there's questions from board members about policy, or if there's questions and procedures from administration that know that we can come, bring it up, talk about it, and then keep it in alignment so we have a process to go. Because, Lori, to your point, you're very senior on the board. You've been here a very, very long time, along with Randy, and Christy and I are the second most senior. So we have a new board here. So I'd like to have, as a group, we'd be able to, if there's issues and things that get brought up, we come in, we talk about them. If there's something that we need to actually make a motion and vote on, that we have a procedure and everybody's comfortable with that, is really what I'm trying to get accomplished as a secondary part of this exercise.
I guess the only other point of discussion, which I somewhat raised in the last one, you know, Tom, the language that you reference, that the superintendent will implement procedures for the APP, I mean, is that what you're saying? That's where the edits will be made in terms of?
No, I don't really know what, I didn't create that. I don't know what the intent of that means.
Right,
So that's
like-
why I think.
Like,
really
this
spelling
doesn't
that
sound
out-
like a procedure, this sounds like a policy, you know what I mean? So,
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was referencing the.
no,
board
I am,
policy.
and I'm saying superintendent will implement procedures, that sounds like process. That doesn't sound like, you know, so we'd be effectively changing the policy to reflect the decisions that were behind this?
Correct.
Okay, and so, again, my only hesitation in doing that is I feel like we have an APP process that can fully accomplish this without having it as a policy within a policy. So it just seems like APP will apply except in these situations. I just have a feeling the policy's gonna become, you know, the policy probably will have to be entirely rewritten. And if that's what because, you know,
No, I
we
understand.
talk, most of the policy talks about following the APP process. And so I guess legally, you know, exempting out seventh graders, but not all seventh graders, only seventh graders where there's not a modified sport, it just gets, you know, it just gets messy. And so, you know, if that's what we're doing, I feel like it's more than just the language that you're quoting, because the language that you're quoting, I don't think this would qualify under a procedure, you know what I'm saying?
And I do.
And so if we're rewriting the policy, then I feel like it's got to go to the policy committee, and then it's got to be a first reading and a second reading, and,
Yeah, and it's gotta say that the seventh graders can play modified if they're eligible, and I really, in my heart, do not feel that they should play up. They have modified if they want to, or they can, you know, a lot of times the kids who are very good do travel ball and travel soccer and whatever. So I think it should be more clear on who can play and who was part of this policy.
So
that we're-
there are several school districts that over the years have made changes. I don't know if they actually changed their board policy or if they just implemented a practice. But there were many school districts that have said, we're not having seventh graders being on JV or varsity because of the social emotional aspect. And I think that like the whole pandemic exacerbated that when we saw kids that were really going through a lot of things. At the end of the day, like Steve hit the nail on the head, this is what the board does. The board
Right.
does policy. So if the board were to say, well, you know, we disagree, we see what your point, me and Jamie Grimshaw. One of the other things, though, it's really important to understand is, so I coach 3 varsity sports, and there's a lot of pressure on coaches. And so to have to make an objective decision without people thinking that it's subjective when it comes down to maturity, you're always going to have people say, garbage. You said yes to that 7th grader because you go to the restaurant with that father or that mother. People are always going to say those things. And when you weigh the two next to it, I just personally don't see that we're doing a massive disservice to a kid that can still play JV or varsity at the 8th grade level. Again, I go back and then in conclusion, I'll just say, I respect the fact that the board does policy. And so if the board says, we hear what you're saying, Tom, but we're not in agreement with that, I respect that 100% because the board does policy.
And again, I don't necessarily disagree with the assertions with respect to 7th graders. I mean, with my own kids, I discouraged my 7th grader currently from playing a sport that doesn't have a modified level because of maturity. And as a parent, I think that I'd probably be the one that's best to know whether my student is mature or can handle the pressure and so on and so forth. But I guess, again, my concern with this is the APP process provides for everything that you're talking about because the athletic director, who I think last meeting you said that this was his idea because of his feelings about it. He has to sign off on all of those. And so if it's his provision that 7th graders that have a modified sport available should play the modified sport, then on his page of the APP thing, he would say declined, modified sport available. I feel like that's a more appropriate for the student. And so I guess that's where and it's probably just the legal training in me, having rules within rules just ends up getting messy. And so when there's a rule that covers it and it can accomplish the same ending, it just seems redundant to have another rule inside of that rule. But, again, I tend to agree with the premise. It's just the process that's happening. I just feel like it's a bit redundant. I think what's more that people just don't want to say no. They don't want to be the ones that say declined on the APP application. I mean, every 7th grader that applied for any of the sports that have modified level could say declined on the page that is required for. Right, so.
But that's.
But I think we've already discussed this, so like at length, this portion of it, with all due respect, like last meeting, we spent a huge amount of time just discussing this topic and whether Jamie is literally going to go through and every time a modified student applies for a contact sport, that wants to play varsity, he has to go through and decline every single one based on the premise that, they're not ready. And then every single parent that disagrees is going to call him and it's going to turn into this giant thing that it doesn't need to be. I mean, I don't know where it stands. I'll just make it here and known, irregardless of whatever's brought up tonight. I am absolutely not for, in any circumstances, a 7th grader playing any varsity sport where it can otherwise be prevented with a modified sport in play. I'm just not for it, irregardless of anything, and I wouldn't support any policy relinquishing that back to the APP process or whatever that might be. I'm just not for it. I don't think the 7th graders have any place playing JV or varsity sports when they have a modified sport to play.
Yeah, and I think the question is, too, is where's the backstop? So if you have the athletic director and superintendent not wanting to deal with the decision, then the backstop is the board and saying that 7th graders will not play. If there's a modified team, they're going to play on the modified team. And that ends that. So then it's almost like a shield to the athletic director and the superintendent that this is a board policy. If you got a problem with it, go to the board. And I think that's, to me, I'm not on one side of the fence or the other when it comes to 7th graders playing the sport, but it's what the athletic director and the superintendent want. So that will sway me to support them in what they do. But this has got to get cleaned up so it makes sense. So that it makes sense. And I don't think it can really be down to a couple sentences, and then it's not up. Because what ultimately happens is memos get lost, emails get lost, texts get lost, where if it's going to be that important, let's get it in writing, let's get it in a policy, let's go through the channels, and then we'll go through.
And
So
to David's point, I'm not an attorney. We have attorneys on our board, but I'm not an attorney. I don't know, could it just stop? So if it wasn't the coach that said no, but if it's the athletic director that can say no, what's the next level that a parent can say, well, I'm going to challenge that. I'm
I
going to
assume
bring,
there'd have to be an appeal process.
I'm going to bring this into court. And so to Allison's point, where does that stop? And so now are we going to expend district resources with appeals? But again, as I said from the beginning, I wholeheartedly believe the board makes policy, and I respect that process. So whatever the outcome is, I will respect that.
okay. Any further discussion? Do you want me to reiterate what the motion was?
Thank you.
I'll try and do my best. No slipping. So my motion is to have the memo that Jamie Crenshaw has written go back to the policy committee to be incorporated into 7420 sports and athletic programs, so that it talks about the things that they would like to get accomplished in the memo, be put into policy, go through the policy committee, first and second reading, and then come back before the board. That's my motion.
And it's already been seconded.
It's already been seconded. So could I get all those in favor?
Well, I would need it to be,
All those opposed? Motion passes. Okay, thank you very much. You're up, Tom.
Well, I can thank Mateo because he literally took 3 quarters.
I heard a lot of scratching going on over there.
3
Some
quarters of all the
lying
DECA,
out.
all of the sports. Excellent, very thorough, Mateo. I appreciate that. The one thing that I do want to be able to just kind of give an update is I did give City BOCES a tour of CSI as a possibility to potentially lease space. They are having a meeting coming up, and they will be discussing, there is a need for space with our many programs at BOCES. The other thing that we were looking at over at CSI, and we still are, Aaron Phillips has done a really good job. We're in the process right now of taking all the information they got for what full-day UPK could look like. And we started to get, a lot of the surveys back, so we kind of know about the parent interest in that. Ironically enough, there are still a lot of parents that still just want their kid to be in half-day UPK. I was surprised. I thought parents would really jump on having full day, but I totally understand the parents' point with that. But what we're thinking is if we're able to accomplish what we want on an entire wing, could that then, the cost be then completely offset by the leasing for elementary special ed programming that could be housed down there? So that's exciting. We're in the process. That I gave the tour to Roseanne at City BOCES over the break. I also want to give a huge shout out. We had a very unfortunate situation at Millard Hawk in the art room where there was a little small fire before break, a lot of smoke, and Paul Brissett did an amazing job right on the spot putting it out before it really got worse. And his crew did a phenomenal job over the break. You don't smell anything. The cabinets were replaced. We had extra cabinets. Everything was painted. I went in there over the break, and I just went in there again today. And art classes are resuming, and it looks like a brand new classroom. So kudos to our maintenance and our custodial crews. They really did a wonderful job. And really kudos to Elizabeth Smith, who is here today, who is our interim principal over at MHE. What they did, and it was amazing because we brought all of the students into the what do you call it there, the auditorium.
Auditorium.
And they were showing Christmas movies and whatnot for the kids. We even had some of our carolers and our performers playing for them. The kids didn't want to leave. Like, they were having the time of their life in there, which was great. I had probably, I don't know, Pearl, probably over 15 parents call and just say, thank you. That was great. We never want a situation like that, but the way that you guys handled it. So really hats off to Elizabeth Smith, that entire staff at Millard Hawk Elementary that we watched make the kids feel really comfortable in a really unfortunate situation. So really hats off to them. Again, the DECA, that was already said. And yeah, that pretty much, Mateo, thank you. That wraps up my superintendent report.
That's A+, Mateo, on that.
Yep.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, could I get a motion for item H in its entirety?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Who's the first one that made the motion?
Oh,
I did.
Christie.
Oh, Lori made it, and I seconded. Doesn't,
Yeah.
yeah.
And could I get a motion for item I, adjournment?
I'll second, or whatever.
All those in favor?